Over the last few years, lots of people have been coming into our sport of cycling and purchasing something like this, a fairly basic cycle odometer or computer. And the great thing is that you can get one of these days quite cheaply. So I won't say next to nothing, but just a few pounds, dollars, or whatever your local currency is. And they will offer you plenty of great functions. So current, average, and maximum speed, how far you've ridden on the day, how far you've ridden since you got the computer, and also how long you've been riding for. And some will even throw in some extra, slightly more complicated functions, such as heart rate. So we thought we'd give you our tips on how to mount one of these simple wired computers in the neatest way possible. Now, some computers will come with rubber bands to secure the fork sensor and the computer mount into place, and others, like our one, will come with a number of zip ties. Now, if you want to be particularly neat, you can go out and purchase your own zip ties, which will match up to the paint scheme of your bike. Now, I tend to start by mounting the fork sensor first. So this small piece here. It doesn't really matter whereabouts on the fork you locate it. It can be up here, or it can be in the middle. But my personal recommendation is to put it at the bottom. And the reason for this is that when your wheel is spinning with the magnet on it, it's actually going slower at the bottom end of the spokes than the top end. And since it measures your speed by passing the magnet by the sensor, there are less chance of inaccuracies. And my second recommendation is that you always make sure that the sensor is mounted in a forward position. That way, if it happens to get nudged in towards the spokes, as they rotate round, they'll just push it back out again. If you do it on the back, and it happens to get nudged in towards the spokes, as the wheel rotates, it can break it, or even worse, it could stop your front wheel dead. And my final recommendation is to place the sensor on the same fork leg as the side in which the outer brake cable enters the caliper, which on most bikes, like this one, will be the right-hand side. And the reason for that, you will see in just a few moments. Before I secure the fork sensor into place though, I'm going to mount the magnet onto one of my spokes. Now with this type of radial spoke system where the spokes come straight out from the hub towards the rim, I'm not limited at all as to where I can put my magnet, but if you've got the traditional crisscross pattern, you might be slightly more limited. Now this particular magnet is one which you can do up by hand. And if you look inside it here, you can see that there's one section on one side of the screw, which is for bladed spokes, and the other side is for traditional round spokes. Now, if you've got a magnet which requires a screwdriver, generally they only accommodate the traditional round spokes. Okay, if you are mounting your speed sensor to the fork and your computer mount to the bars using zip ties, then it's not a bad idea to place some tape underneath where the zip ties are going to be. That way, if it ever comes to the point where you want to take it off for whatever reason, and you're going to use some cable cutters or indeed a Stanley knife, you lessen your chances of scratching your frame as you do it. Right, I'm now going to semi-secure the front fork sensor into place. Now this particular one has some double-sided tape on the back to help make sure it sticks in the right place. So peel that away and put it on the legs. And we can do our zip ties up, not completely tight just yet. Right, we now want to check that we have the magnet and the sensor lined up properly. And as I said, on this particular sensor, there's a line indicating where the magnet should pass by, but just check your instructions for your particular computer to see where they recommend. Now, most of them will recommend a distance of between 2 and 5 millimeters between the magnet and the sensor itself. So I reckon I've got roughly 3 here. And now it's a very good time to actually mount your computer onto the other end. Give the wheel a good spin, keeping the cable out of the way, and checking that you've got a speed reading on there. Now I've got up to 15 miles per hour. Actually, it's only k's an hour. You might well get more than that. If you find, however, that it's not registering any speed, just experiment with moving the magnet up and down slightly, or indeed the sensor slightly closer towards the wheel until it registers a speed, at which point you can take the computer off, tighten up your zip ties. I tend to have the bulbous bit there on the inside of the wheel just for neatness, and then you can cut the excess off. Right, now it's time to place the cable and we're going to gradually trail it up to the bars where this will be mounted. So first things first, I tend to zip tie the cable, one bit by the sensor and one bit towards the top of the fork leg, and try to run it slightly inside and to the rear of the fork leg. No particular reason for this, other than it's about as far out of sight as it can be without having any chance of going into the spokes. So once again, if you're going to use a zip tie to secure it into place, use your tape and put some where that zip tie is going to go so that you won't scratch things if you ever take it off. Once it's secured onto the fork, you then want to bring the cable up towards the brake cable as it enters into the barrel adjuster of the brake caliper, and we're then going to start winding it around neatly up towards the bar. However, when you do it, when you start winding, in the initial point, you just want to make sure that it's not too taut here, that there's enough slack in the wire of the bike computer that when you turn the bars, it's not restricting the movement in any way. So you should be able to get a nice, neat wind all the way up the front brake cable. Now I'm going to mount the computer mount on the right hand side, and that is because I use front brake right, which means that the cable is going into the right hand side. For the rest of you who have left brake front, you're probably going to want to mount it on the left hand side, because that's where your outer brake cable is going to go. So once you've got that nice neat wind around the brake cable, just make sure that when you mount the computer by hand on the top, or the computer mount, you've got a small amount of slack here. You don't want it too taut in case it pulls the cables out as time goes on. And then you'll normally have a piece of rubber. This one is double-sided again, which goes on the bars where you're about to put the mount. Then, good idea to mount the computer itself, because otherwise, if you're a little bit stupid like me, you might end up putting the mount the wrong way around. This way I know it's the right way around, and I can just make sure that the computer is angled just up towards where I'm going to be sat on the bike. And then I can secure it into place again with my zip ties. Okay, once you have installed your computer and it's fully mounted, the next step is to input your wheel circumference into the computer itself. Now, your instructions will tell you exactly how to do this, and they may well also give you a guide, depending on the type of wheel you've got, as to roughly what the wheel circumference is. But a very easy and far more accurate way of judging your wheel size is to put your bike on the floor, put the wheel so that the valve is facing downwards on the floor, mark that spot, roll your bike directly forwards until that valve has done one complete revolution and is again facing the floor. Mark the next spot and measure the distance between the two lines. That distance in millimeters is normally what you'll input into your bike computer. And that is it. You're ready to roll and measure how fast you're going and how far you're riding. Now, if you would like to see how to fix an energy, we've got a video on that, which you can find just up here. On the other hand, if you would like to see the benefits of a slightly more expensive GPS computer, both in racing and also out in training on sportive rides, you can find that by clicking down there. And if you would like to subscribe to the channel, it's absolutely free. All you've got to do is click anywhere on this kind of pane window here.